Hundreds of protesters from USC and beyond march in support of Palestinians. We're live as LAPD is now on campus demanding protesters leave.
Trojans react to a legendary alum getting his spot back in Heritage Hall.
Armenians across LA fight for their recognition.
Annenberg TV News is next.
The situation escalates on campus as hundreds rally, protesting the ongoing Israel-Hamas war.
USC students set up an encampment in Alumni Park this morning, and just minutes ago, LAPD officers marched onto campus ready to clear out protester encampments. Hi, I'm Clara Rodriguez.
And I'm Malcolm Caminero. Let's go live to Corinne Smith at Alumni Park with the very latest.
Hundreds of protesters are still out here in Alumni Plaza rallying to support Palestine. And just minutes ago, we heard from LAPD that they would be arresting students for trespassing if they did not disperse in the next few minutes here. We've also been alerted that there are police in riot gear at several entrances to campus. Campus has been closed down and they're telling students to disperse. DPS has been out here all day and students have been rallying. Earlier, the Solidarity encampment started peacefully and then clashes occurred around noon today between police and students. We have a bit more on that. Campus police began clashing with protesters just after 11 a.m. when officers began grabbing tents and said they needed to disperse because of a planned event in the park. Officers threw several students to the ground. There was pushing and shoving, and protesters grabbed their tents back and began marching them around the plaza. Officers detained one student in a patrol car. Hundreds of students had joined the crowd by then and surrounded the car chanting. Officers then released the protester. It was a stark contrast to how the USC Gaza Solidarity encampment began the morning, where about 50 students, faculty, and press had gathered. Students did yoga, shared poetry, and speeches in solidarity with Palestinians.
So this solidarity occupation with Gaza is launching today with a specific demand that USC divest from Israeli companies and divest from war profiteering companies that are directly related to the genocide that is happening to our families in Gaza right now as we speak.
The occupation is part of dozens of similar student-led protests across college campuses nationwide. By early afternoon, students marched back to Alumni Park to continue rallying. Many students and faculty expressed outrage at how some DPS officers were treating protesters.
That behavior by DPS, the escalation, unnecessary, was thuggish behavior, frankly, and it's the kind of behavior that I don't expect to come from our own DPS services toward our own students. We're supposed to be acting kind of in the interest of the students, trying to promote their well-being and welfare, and to bring in violent agents to treat them in a violent way is wrong 6 ways from Sunday.
So far, protesters seem determined. No one has really left Alumni Park here. The crowd is still rallying, but the atmosphere is definitely tense. Students are stressed and anxious, and we're hearing reports that LAPD will be coming in, but so far no sign yet. I will say too that it's not only students, it's faculty. I also saw community members. There was families here. People brought their pets, and it is a community solidarity rally to support Palestine. We will be here, Annenberg Media will be here on scene documenting along with a lot of press to capture what goes on here, and we'll have more. Definitely stay tuned to Annenberg Media, and I'm Corinne Smith for ATVN. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Corinne. According to the USC Student Coalition Against Labor Exploration, the protesters were demanding that the university divest tuition dollars from Israel and end study abroad programs to Israel, protect free speech of students voicing support for Palestine, and demand that the university call for a ceasefire in the Hamas-Israel war. Non-students were also among today's protesters.
I came from Chicago to observe what these protesters are doing, and it's really a sad day that USC could not conduct himself in a negotiating stage with these students here.
This protest seemed to arise out of a reaction to what's happening at Columbia University right now.
This afternoon, the university said it was restricting unauthorized visitors from coming to campus. As campus protesters intensified earlier today, DPS began suiting up in riot gear. Annenberg Media reached out to DPS for a comment, but no one has responded to our request. In the meantime, more than a dozen LAPD cruisers lined Vermont Avenue, blocking the Downey Way entrance until entering campus minutes ago. Provost Andrew Guzman sent an email to the USC community this afternoon about safety. The provost said, quote, "We have well-established policies regarding limits on the manner of free expression. These include a prohibition on erecting tents, use of loudspeakers, and the disruption of essential functions of the university." The protesters on campus have raised concerns about the anti-Semitic rhetoric. David Cohen is the executive director of USC Hillel and described how Jewish students are feeling.
I can tell you that the students who I'm speaking to are distraught, completely pierced to the heart, terrified, and shocked. I believe that our university administration has a responsibility at this point to act assertively and to demonstrate its commitment through action to ensuring that this campus remains the type of destination that we have sought to create.
Multiple student activists, student organizers, and professors spoke at today's protests.
Reporter Liv Kelleher is here with us now with more on one political figure who made an appearance.
USC alumna and co-founder of the LA chapter of Black Lives Matter joined students in protest today. Melina Abdullah shared a message of solidarity, emphasizing the importance of students at the forefront of social justice movements.
Fight on and fight back until we have a free Palestine. Ashe?
Student organizers echoed Abdullah's sentiment, recalling other moments in history where student calls for divestment resulted in action. One student protester shared their thoughts on USC's treatment of pro-Palestinian students.
We see that you do not care about our safety. We see that you only care about the financial interests, about your financial interests, about your donors and your reputation. We want them to speak out for the liberation of the Palestinian people, just as we their student body, who pays tuition, who creates research, who creates their reputation and continues their reputation as an elite university, that we do not accept and we will never accept this complicity.
Melina Abdullah is the running mate to long-shot independent presidential candidate Cornel West. They're calling for a ceasefire in Gaza and an end to what they say is an apartheid state in Israel as part of their campaign platform. Now we're going to go back to reporter Corinne Smith with updates from the encampment.
So LAPD officers have entered Alumni Park. We can see about a dozen officers in riot gear here behind me. It seems that they are lining up to enter the park where students are. I apologize, my earpiece, and they've entered the park. Protesters are running and following. The press is also following to cover. We believe they will be making arrests here shortly. It's hard to tell. I also heard LAPD helicopters overhead. saying to disperse or you will be arrested. But people are still chanting and determined, and they have said that they will be here occupying the park until their demands are met. I'll go back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Corinne. It's not just students at USC, though. There are tent encampments and pro-Palestinian protests popping up on college campuses around the country. They include Harvard University, Brown University, the University of Michigan, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and University of Texas, Austin.
Free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine!
At the University of Texas at Austin, hundreds of protesters faced off with police in riot gear. Officers arrested more than 24 participating in a pro-Palestinian protest. The university sent the student group a letter asking students to cancel the protest because it violated campus rules and was disruptive. Students at Columbia University are continuing to protest, but have agreed to scale down the camp. Meanwhile, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, visited Columbia and is now calling for the university president to resign over the way she's handling the protests. At Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, President Joe Biden is set to speak at the commencement ceremony next month. But his handling of the Israel-Gaza war is drawing backlash. Some faculty and alumni are circulating a petition to get the college to rescind Biden's invitation.
It gives us like that representation that the president like acknowledges Morehouse as like the illustrious institution that it is. So I feel like it's a double-edged sword.
We look at your actions. And he has an opportunity now to go beyond simply a photo op and actually put forth an immediate and permanent ceasefire.
So police have now lined up in an aggressive stance. They have lined up across the bike path of Alumni Plaza, appearing to divide the campus here. They're not communicating. I'm not hearing messages directly right now, but a few minutes ago they have said that all protesters must disperse or risk arrest for trespassing. It appears they are preparing to enforce that, literally with force. We can see LAPD here lined up, dozens in helmets and batons and stun guns. I'm not hearing any clear commands or directions of where protesters should go. Also, there's a lot of press here, but not clear where press should go either. But, meanwhile in the park, the protesters are still chanting and they're determined. They're drumming, singing, and rallying, and appear to be readying for this standoff. I'm not hearing any directions for protesters. I'm not hearing any where we should go or how people should exit. So they are lining up here, readying. Not sure what's happening.
Corinne, we're watching this with you. Is DPS with you on site?
DPS is standing back there on the bike path behind protesters, and LAPD has come on campus into Alumni Park and is lining up, preparing to arrest students.
Corinne, be sure to stay safe. Now we can see the brigade in front of you sort of banding together of LAPD. Have they taken any steps forward? Have they said anything to any of the protesters, possibly to anybody in front of them?
Not yet, no. I'm not hearing any announcements. They just lined up. A few minutes ago, maybe 10 minutes ago, they declared that protesters would be arrested for trespassing, but so far no clear directions.
I see, right. And so how are protesters reacting to this? Are they backing away? Are they getting their belongings, ready to leave? What's going on? How are they reacting?
No, they seem very determined. There are definitely students watching, observing, standing back from the action. We have a lot of students filming, as well as press here. We have cameras, there's helicopters overhead. And people watching what's going to happen here. I don't see any protesters directly encountering police or engaging with them or yelling or chanting in their direction. Protesters are actually just assembled together, closely drumming and singing and chanting in the park. So we're not seeing a sort of standoff here, we're just seeing the police line up en masse, and we'll be live here. We are covering this entire thing on Annenberg Media, and we'll continue to cover this and watch as things unfold here.
Is there a lot of press there? We can tell that there's a lot of other media around you.
Yes, definitely. We have national news media here. We have local LA media. And this is a huge story. I mean, it was definitely a tense standoff and severe clashes against protesters early in the day, where we saw DPS actually grab people's tents and try to put their belongings in DPS trucks, and students tried to grab them back and regain their property, and DPS officers threw several students to the ground. A crowd gathered and chanted and demanded they let them go, and things really got heated earlier today. They detained one student and who was later let go, but I think that really put everyone on edge and put the alarm out for, like, in terms
Corinne,
of
what's going on
DPS
in the air?
is ready
Are there a lot
to-
of helicopters? You know, the helicopters have been there since the morning. How many do you see in the air right now?
I can't really see any at this time, but yeah, we've had helicopters overhead like all day long at this protest.
Corinne, you also mentioned that protesters are still proceeding with how they were going on earlier, chanting and marching and such. Is there any chance that that is going to maintain within the next hour or so? Does it look like protesters are backing off and maybe breaking away? Does it look like they're going to still keep going on with their protest?
It looks like they will keep going. They are very determined. They're locking arms here at Alumni Park. We can see people are preparing. Though standing back, they're not stepping to police, but it looks like they are determined and will be staying here in the encampment and continuing to rally in solidarity.
Does it appear just to be students, maybe some faculty, possibly some other people who aren't even associated with USC, maybe some people from the community?
Yeah, earlier today I met alum who came to USC. Alumni came back to USC to participate in this solidarity protest, but definitely students are here, faculty, also community members. I saw families with kids earlier today. I think they have exited campus by now. But yeah, we have a huge crowd here, and students are on the perimeter watching and, here to support, but maybe not in the center of things. But it's, yeah.
So we can see people are locked arm in arm. Around how many people do you think are there? Maybe guesstimate a number if possible.
I would say probably 50 to 60. We have people seated on the ground inside this circle, and then surrounding people have locked arms here. So maybe, 50 to 60.
Just in case you're just joining us, around 11 o'clock is when DPS officers came onto campus in Alumni Park and started removing some of the encampments that students had set up in the morning. Around that time is also when a clash between DPS and protesters and students started to take place. During that protest, a protester was arrested. Students had finally had enough, and they had stopped the DPS car from leaving the area, which forced DPS officers to release that protester, which is also around the time that protesters started marching, which is when DPS and some LAPD officials began creating a barricade between Bovard Auditorium on the left side of the screen and the rest of the student protesters that you can see on screen currently. Corinne, are there any more updates from when we started initially? How is it different from this morning?
Yeah, I'd just like to note that there are more LAPD riot officers here on scene than actual students locking down in this core group of protesters. Just the numbers of police officers is pretty astounding. And they are in full riot gear with helmets, batons, and I believe non-lethal weapons. And it's just astounding. Yeah, let's take a look at the officers over here. Oh, now I see bulletproof vests. It's a shocking display on a college campus.
Yeah, that seems like a lot of officers, especially for a group of the size of the protesters.
Definitely, yeah, and especially since USC only started the solidarity encampment with Gaza this morning. It looks quite astounding, really.
Right, and there's a lot of questions about when and why LAPD is called in to a college campus. But yeah, we will be here covering, and students are looking determined, and we'll be standing. We are not clear on the timeline here, but it was probably
Corinne,
20 minutes ago. Yeah.
Yeah, Corinne, can you hear anything? Are people chanting anything, the protesters or even the officers? Is it quiet? Is it noisy? Is it loud?
Protesters are just continuing to chant, but we just got a text alert here that Los Angeles Police Department is clearing the center of the USC campus, and if you're at the center of campus, please leave. So we think that there will be police movement here imminently, but for now, protesters are determined.
DPS, I know, put out a report to students on campus mentioning that if you are in the center of campus, to please leave. It looks like both DPS and LAPD is trying to break up the protesters, and the protesters are doing their best to remain within the area and show their support.
I mean, the students here look nervous, but like I said, they look determined and have not been dispersing. This group has remained here. It's not getting smaller. We're just here kind of at a standstill.
Corinne,
and really, I'll say
that.
Yeah.
Corinne, you had also mentioned that they're playing some drums in the background, or that they're shouting chants of sorts. Could you say what those chants are specifically? Are you able to make them out?
Not really at this distance. I apologize. But it's chanting in support of Palestine and calling for USC to cut ties with Israel and all the U.S. affiliated ties with Israel and end the siege on Palestine. This is a very strong showing here, and it, connected with college campuses around the country. And so far, chants continue. I can't really make them out, but we're here more towards the police line, waiting to see what they do here. But there are also students milling around and coming out of class, and sort of students behind the police officers as well. But we're kind of at a standstill here. We're just waiting and seeing, and it's very tense for sure.
Thank you, Corinne. Appreciate it. Now we will be back momentarily with more updates on the situation on campus.
Let me tell you how we amplify our Latina voices. Check out Dímelo. We have it all.
Deportes.
Entertainment. Noticias. ¿Qué tal? Soy Mariela Gómez y bienvenidos a Dímelo Ahora.
Radio and podcasting.
Comida y cultura. Digital social media.
¿A qué equipo le vas tú? LA Galaxy o LAFC? Dímelo is the only Latina-focused media outlet at USC. Dímelo, we have it all.
Dímelo, we have it all.
Mr. Owl,
How many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop?
Let's find out. 1, 2, 3.
How many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop? The world may never know.
There's a new pet.
Chia.
Chia Pet, the pottery that grows. It's fun and easy. Soak your chia, spread the seeds, keep it watered, and watch it grow. And now grow a whole collection of fun with chia teddy bears, puppies, kittens, rams, bulls. There's even a chia tree to keep your pets company. Chia Pets and Trees, the pottery that grows.
The Chia Pet and Chia Tree are available at Kmart, Rite Aid, Ames, and Woolworth. Makes a great gift.
And we are back on campus live from the USC campus. Corinne, can you give us the latest? What's going on? What's new on campus?
Yes, we are seeing LAPD officers now jogging down the bike path to assemble a longer line of officers, now circling the park, it appears. But we can see cameras and students and protesters sort of running north. It's not really clear what's going on because there's no real announcements. You would expect announcements from officers about where to go or what's going on, but they just move quickly. And we are staying on them. We are staying on the officers. The protesters have not moved from the center of the park. The core group of protesters is still there, and then we have a lot of students on the sidelines who are chanting in support. But it's not really clear what is going on or what the next moves are. As you can see here, the LAPD officers are heavily armed. We can see they're carrying this neon green, sort of like, I don't even know what to call it. You can see zip ties, you can see batons, tasers. They also have body cameras, and they are wearing helmets and shields. Some of them are wearing bulletproof vests, but no students are armed, I will say that. No students are stepping up to cops or engaging with them directly. This is a crazy scene here. It's not clear what the violation is or what's going to happen next. The chants have remained consistent.
I can't emphasize this enough. Please stay safe, but also, are you able to tell where both LAPD and the protesters are moving?
Not really. We've seen them spread down the bike path and extend, and our cameraman Michael is sticking on it where LAPD is moving, but protesters have not really moved. Like I said, that core group is still in the park, and now we can see that officers have surrounded the park here, and then students are mostly on the steps of the Center for International Public Affairs building, the Joseph Medicine Crow building, and staying kind of out of the way on the steps and all together here. Like I said, no one is stepping to the police line or engaging with them or provoking in any way. We are just watching this continued police crowd move forward and surround the park here.
Corinne, you showed us earlier the sort of equipment that LAPD had in their hands. They clearly look like they're geared for some sort of combat. And you had mentioned that the students aren't really interacting between the two, but clearly tensions are rising as the seconds go by. Is there any interaction happening, maybe some sort of instigation, some yelling back and forth in any capacity that you can tell?
No, not at all. Here, we can take a minute and listen to the chants here, but the chants have been consistent all afternoon. Talk to a protester here. I know a lot of students are hesitant because to be on camera, Actually, you might talk to this professor. Hi, Jody Armour.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being with Annenberg Media. We are live now on ATVN.
Right.
And can you talk a bit about the police presence here and LAPD now on campus and surrounding students?
Yeah, LAPD's on campus. This is an unwarranted escalation, right? Bringing in LAPD, who has a history of excessive force and violence against protesters. They've lost a lot of suits since 2013, and so this is an unnecessary escalation that must be laid at the doorstep of the central administration, and we need to start calling out names, like the provost, like the president, like the vice president, specifically Errol Southers, and that includes the Provost Guzman and the president as well. This is not how you treat your students.
And have you seen anything like this in your time at USC?
I've been here since the morning. We've had no outside agitators. These have been students. They've been peacefully demonstrating. This is an unwarranted escalation. And no, I haven't seen anything like this since I've been on campus, because we've had central administrators who exercise more restraint and more care and concern for their students. Leave the area! Leave the area! Leave the area!
So LAPD now has pushed through the student crowd. It looks like to extend to across this building and then fully surround the park. And that was Professor. And we are okay here. We're media inside, but that was Professor Jody Armour, USC School of Law. He's making it clear that this is a very escalated situation with LAPD that was unprovoked. There was no clashes in this last hour at all. And LAPD is here apparently except right now we are seeing something. We're seeing officers tackle someone.
Corinne, can you make out what they are chanting exactly? Can you tell us what they're chanting?
No, we've just seen a clash here. Water was sprayed. Water was sprayed apparently on an officer.
Corinne, tell us what's happening right now. It looks like they might have somebody possibly in custody. They're at least holding somebody.
And the crowd is shouting, "Let him go."
The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated.
They detained one person, they're arresting one person. They're surrounded by cameras and arresting one student now, handcuffing them. It's not clear what for, but one has been taken. There is a shoe. I'm seeing a shoe on the steps. Someone has lost a shoe in that scuffle. It's unclear why they arrested. The press is asking.
Let her go! Let her go! Let her go! Let her go! Let her go!
Is there any way that you're able to tell us what this person did or might have done?
No, it's not clear. No, there's pushing. We saw that earlier where police pushed into protesters, which started a skirmish and then knocked them down. So these protesters have not been engaging with police officers, provoking. What I've seen today is officers pushing students first. And now the crowd is moving here, as you can see. It's not very clear where or what, because we're not getting directions from officers about what is happening or where to go or where are the lines. It's chaotic.
Corinne, have you had any direct contact with the police, physical contact with them? Have they pushed or shoved you at any moment?
Yes, they pushed Michael in that last confrontation, and they are jostling. Michael is our cameraman, and they are not clear with press about what they're doing or where they're going. So yes, we were jostled. As you can see, they have hands on batons now, although no students are nearby. No students are here. That core group of protesters is still where they were to begin with, in the middle of Alumni Park. So they just pushed through this line of spectators here, and it looks like they are moving in the opposite direction now.
Corinne, do you know where they're moving to? It looks like they're extending their barricade.
But yeah, things were very chaotic, very suddenly. There's, like I said, no direction from police about what's happening, what is unlawful here, what's going on.
It seemed that earlier the two groups didn't have much interaction with each other. Obviously now it looks like they had detained one of the protesters. How has that changed the chaos of the current situation? Has it escalated significantly from where it was maybe 10, 15 minutes ago?
So officers are now entering Alumni Park. Their line is moving forward into the park. Again, no direction. We're just seeing them move. It appears they are moving in to surround Alumni Park. Now they've been directed to turn their backs to the park. There, like I said, it's a shocking number of police officers here. Definitely outnumbering the core student protesters. And the student crowd, though, of supporters has moved onto the bike path now, and are watching and have their phones and cameras out. There's also a group of students on the other side near Downey Library. So there's a lot of observers here. There are also, I will say, as the National Lawyers Guild observers who've been out here all day as legal observers. But it's very tense. It's very tense. It appears they are getting ready to enter the park and take over.
Corinne, have you had any additional contact with either some protesters, maybe some of the LAPD guards that are there? Corinne, have you had any additional contact with some of the officers, maybe some of the protesters that are there? For those just joining us, the situation from when LAPD first landed on campus was about an hour ago or so, maybe 30 minutes. And now that situation has escalated into what appears to be an actual back and forth conflict between LAPD officers, who, might I add, are armed with riot gear. Additionally, some of the protesters have actually been separated. By the looks of it, it seems like some of them are separated more toward the entrance part of campus and creating a divide between those stuck in the Doheny area of campus. It looks like they're trying to bridge a gap to get to Alumni Park. I know earlier when I attended the encampment, around 11 a.m. is when DPS officers showed up at Alumni Park. Behind the officers that you see on camera is when DPS officers showed up to Alumni Park to remove some of the tents and students and signs that had been set up there. Within that amount of time is also when a clash broke out between DPS and students and protesters. That was the first clash of the day. That was near 11:30, possibly 12 o'clock. Within that is also when one of the protesters was arrested and placed in the back of a DPS squad car. Students had finally had enough. They surrounded that car, which forced DPS officers to release that protester. Around that time is also when a march around Doheny, which is what you're seeing on screen, started beginning a little bit between protesters and students, roughly around 200, possibly 300 students. That started growing as the hours went on. That's when DPS and LAPD created a barricade on campus between them and the other section of the campus. Corinne, are you able to hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, and one more thing is that we have an update. The police are now blocking people from coming in. They're not allowing people to come onto campus anymore. There seems to be a clear barricade. And even in the surrounding areas around the USC campus.
So we are seeing LAPD
right now. There is a barricade
Alumni
surrounding.
Park. Who's going? Oh, okay. Sorry about that. We are seeing police officers surround Alumni Park, and students are also surrounding them. The crowd of student supporters has not left. There are hundreds of students here observing, watching, filming. Police have now surrounded the park, and there is a core group of protesters who are standing determined. They have not moved in the last hour. There's probably 50 locked arms in the middle, and then also people seated in the middle, and they have not moved. Like I said, there has been no provoking of police. Students have really steered clear of officers. However, officers move quickly, and that we did see one clash where one student was arrested, and we're not quite clear why, but it happened very quickly. But yeah, we are waiting to see what happens. We have police in riot gear with batons pretty much drawn to encounter students. It's a pretty unbelievable sight here, and like I said, no warning from officers. Officer, is there going to be a warning, like a public announcement?
There already was 10 minutes ago.
10 minutes ago? What was it?
Leave the area.
And Corinne,
10 minutes? Okay. This officer says 10 minutes ago there was a warning for all students to leave the area. I did not hear it. It was not very loud. Yeah, it seems like officers are circling, and it's not really clear. I would say the directions are not very clear, but prior, in the last hour, they said that all area would be cleared.
And Corinne, can you tell how big is the crowd of protesters now? Has it become smaller or bigger? Is it the same?
Yeah, no, the crowd has grown. I would say student supporters on the outside has grown, and we are hearing that LAPD is preparing to make arrests. And we will be here covering. Students are standing quietly now in locked arms in solidarity, and are standing in their right to protest, but LAPD is here, and they say they will begin making arrests for trespassing. And it seems apparent that they are ready to use force. They're standing, like I said, with their batons ready and outstretched, and we will be here covering. There's a lot of media inside the police line. Michael and I are in the police line, but there's also a lot of students and supporters outside the police line with cameras and helicopters overhead as well. But it's a peaceful protest. These students have not moved. They're standing with locked arms. They have some signs. Like I said, it's that core group. It hasn't really grown or changed in the last hour.
We're also getting word that some protesters have moved beyond the campus itself and have blocked off the intersection at Jefferson and Hoover.
Corinne, what we are seeing right now is incredible. There seems to be a sea of officers. Can you estimate how many officers there are? I'm seeing lots more police officers than
100.
protesters right now.
No. I have a student here. Yes. So I have a student here who is interested in sharing about why they're here. And tell us if your name, if you'd like to share, but a bit about what brings you here today.
My name is Avery. I'm a student here. I'm a sophomore. I'm here because we're protesting the occupation of Palestine by Israel. For a long time, this university has been incredibly complicit in the genocide that is currently occurring in Palestine and in Gaza specifically. There are children being murdered, there are families being murdered, houses are being destroyed, and we're tired of being a part of an organization that supports that.
Absolutely. And what is your impression of this police presence here today? And they are moving in right now, and they have said that students will be arrested if not dispersed. But what's your impression of like the scene here today?
I think they're being overly aggressive, and I think that's an understatement. They are pushing people, they are throwing people. No one here is doing anything particularly aggressive. People have signs, people are yelling, but that is it. And no one has a weapon, so they are using force for something that doesn't require it whatsoever. And I think it's a sad picture of what the LAPD is.
Yeah, and how long have you been here today in this protest?
I don't know what time it is, but I got here at like 3:30. So yeah, I've been hanging out here with some of my friends and just doing work until they started pushing us in here. So yeah.
And what is your plan now?
Well, I don't really think I have a choice at the moment because we're surrounded, so we can't really go anywhere. But I guess it's to see what happens and, hopefully be safe and, not have anything too bad happen. But yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to add today?
Free Palestine.
Thank you. And back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Corinne. For those of us just joining, around 11 o'clock is when a first wave of DPS officers joined in and tried to take away some of the encampments that had started at Alumni Park earlier in the morning around 5 o'clock. Following the wave of DPS officers that also produced a clash between protesters and those DPS officers, there was a second coming of LAPD officers who showed up on campus. Following that group of officers was another wave of LAPD officers that showed up around 5:30. Those ones were armed with riot gear, with the hats that you can see on screen, some of them holding the non-lethal guns in their hands as well. This is what brings us to the current standoff between LAPD officers and protesters. By the looks of it, it seems that their main goal is to split the protesters between the ones on screen that are holding arms, locked in arms in solidarity, and the other protesters who have kind of been separated between the main groups.
So we are seeing the police line continue to infiltrate the park and surround this group of protesters, but we are also seeing a lot of student supporters on the outer edge of the police line. And I would say those numbers have grown. Students are here to support, and again, there's this core group of protesters here. I would say about 50 standing with arms locked. They have not changed, they have not moved. And then inside is a group seated on the ground. We have several members of the press, including Annenberg Media, inside the police line to cover. I just spotted a professor of journalism here, which is nice to see. And we are just waiting. There has not been any new direction for what is going to happen or the next move. from officers, so we are anticipating a use of force here.
Corinne, beside the initial skirmish that you had seen on camera between LAPD officers and that one protester that it seemed like they detained, could you tell if there were any additional sort of conflicts going on between maybe other protesters and police officers that you could tell at least?
No, I've not seen other skirmishes today, although when police officers start running, that usually means that they will collide with protesters. But tonight we just saw that one skirmish where one was arrested, and the officers are moving now. They're circling tighter around the group, and we are still inside.
Are they circling around a group or anything, Corinne?
They are. They are moving in tighter. And we believe we'll be making arrests shortly.
Are the student groups moving at all, or is it just the LAPD?
Not at all. This group has remained here, arms locked. There hasn't been movement to this group. There has been no provocation. We can see their signs say, "Let humanity win," "Fight on for Palestine." USC students demand divestment. USC is complicit. And this is a core group of protesters here in Alumni Park who are preparing, it seems, to be arrested shortly. The sign says, "Resistance is justified." Here we have a list of demands that we've talked about and been discussed all day today, but we have demands of USC. They divest from Israel as a colonial, apartheid, genocide, and violence, and protect free speech, provide amnesty to students, faculty, and staff punished for pro-Palestinian activity. And it seems, like I said, arrest is imminent here for this group.
For those of us just joining us, reporter Corinne Smith is live at Alumni Park, where a core group of Palestinian protesters are locked in arms, doing their very best to not get in contact or in conflict with the LAPD riot officers who showed up on campus about an hour ago with the goal of breaking up the protesters.
Yeah. So protesters here have said they are not interested in talking with ATVN tonight. But if anyone is interested in talking with ATVN, we'd love to hear from you, but also understand if not. So far, all the protesters are silent and have been locked together, arm in arm, for the last hour. And it's a really powerful sight. It's really incredible to see students out here. Yeah?
Corinne, are you and Michael safe? We're just making sure that both of you are okay.
We have a student here that is interested in sharing it.
We are staring down the gun of fascism. Palestine. Free Palestine.
And are you planning to stay? What's the plan now?
I'm staying.
Long live Palestine.
And
how long are you planning to stay?
as long as it takes.
Palestine will be free.
And are you a student?
No.
Okay. No.
Palestine will be free.
So LAPD has let us know that
USC has determined, go talk to Chief Hill, this area has been nope, so you can stand over there and film, absolutely.
Talk to who?
Right there with me.
Are you available to
No,
speak?
we're not. You can call press office.
They just said we have to call the press office to understand what's happening here. So we have been moved away from protesters and are moved back behind the police line now, and they have batons ready. They said we have to call the LAPD press office to know what's going on, which is incredible.
You guys have to move back to the bushes, please. Behind the bushes.
So they just told us that we need to leave. I don't know if hostile, but just quick. And clearing the area again between the police line and protesters.
And Corinne, when did the police start telling people to stop getting close to that circle?
Just now. We had the call to move out of the area. But again, there are hundreds of students surrounding the police line in support, and they have their phones out and are watching and chanting to support this core group of protesters. I would say there's a lot of media presence here. We have Annenberg Media journalists, and we have outside news that is watching and monitoring the situation.
Corinne, from what you could tell, is that core group of protesters possibly primarily students? Is it maybe faculty, other people from the community? Is it just a group of protesters that sort of linked arms?
Yeah, it's interesting. The last protester we heard from said he was not a student, and I have heard that today where there was alum and community members who came to support, but I would say primarily a student or a student age. Everyone is young, and the police are now addressing the protesters. I'm not really sure what they are saying. They just spoke to the protesters briefly. The students are chanting "Free Palestine."
For those
but it
just
appears
joining
they have
us,
been given a
reporter...
warning. It was a short warning, but the police are... It's not really clear. I didn't hear what the warning was. They just spoke to the protesters, and then they replied by chanting "Free Palestine." We are about to get information from LAPD Press about the latest, and we can see some officers are preparing handcuffs.
From the LAPD, their main goal is to keep order and peace.
And they're looking to clear protesters in a peaceful manner. Other than that, they are not giving any other comment.
For those just joining us, both our live reporter and our camera crew were told to back away from the core group of protesters. Now they are behind LAPD lines.
So police officers are starting to arrest protesters now, who we can see one is surrendering. They have handcuffs, batons, and bulletproof vests. They are handcuffing one student. One student is being arrested now. Another is kneeling. Another protester is kneeling and being arrested peacefully. All we want is peace. Protesters are chanting, "All we want is peace." So it appears they are surrendering peacefully. Yes, all these arrests are now being made of the core group of protesters in the circle. They're being taken out one by one. And so the bike path has now been taped off by LAPD caution tape, and they're taking them down the bike path across the plaza You can see 2 white police vans, paddy wagons, you could say, where the protesters will be taken away.
Corinne, how many protesters have been arrested so far? It looked like a handful there.
Yeah, we could see 3, and now we have another. It appears they're being taken one by one out of the circle, and they are surrendering peacefully. They're being handcuffed or zip tied and taken away. But we cannot hear what officers are saying to them. Earlier in the evening, we heard that they would be arrested for trespassing.
Are the supporters on the outside that are not part of the core group having any reaction to the arrests being made?
So the outside supporters are just continuing to chant and cheer and are drumming and observing this arrest where officers are taking people one by one, handcuffing them and leading them away to a white van.
Have the officers made any comment as to why these...
We haven't.
No, they have not.
We are just hearing word that the UPC campus has been closed and shut down. We have just gotten word that the UPC campus is being closed out of safety concerns.
It appears that officers are slowly arresting protesters one by one. It's not clear, but each one is being taken away. One by one from that core group, inner circle. They are not resisting. It is peaceful.
Following up on our previous update, the UPC campus, the campus you're currently looking at on screen, is closed, and the only people that can access the campus are people with USC IDs.
So we've seen maybe 6 protesters arrested now. 6 protesters, and they're taking people one by one peacefully. No other activity, but we are hearing students chanting outside saying, "Let them go, let them go," to protest arrests for trespassing. There are dozens of police here, and we have 2 helicopters overhead observing this scene. But these students are peaceful. There is no resistance. Protesters are peaceful and surrendering one by one.
I want everybody to back up. Go right.
I would say there are probably maybe, I can't see how many are seated, but 30 to 40 left in the core group of protesters, and they have been here all day. They started this encampment in solidarity for Gaza at, I heard, 5 a.m. this morning, and it's been a continuous back and forth with police here today.
Corinne,
and now we are seeing more arrests.
Corinne, I have to ask, you're surrounded by so many officers right now. How do you feel? Do you feel unsafe yourself?
I feel, honestly, I'm shocked. I'm really shocked. It's a lot of adrenaline. It's really incredible, the show of force here with no warning and no direction from police. They just told protesters that they would risk arrest for trespassing, but there was not a crowd announcement or any kind of officer on a bullhorn letting people know what was going on, what was a violation. I'm really shocked that students are treated this way on a college campus, to be completely honest. I mean, we do have the right to protest, we have the right to assemble, freedom of speech. I would think that USC would want to protect that and respect a peaceful protest just a day long. But as we saw earlier, it only took 4 or 5 hours for DPS to come and clash with students, and they threw down several students. I saw 3 or 4 students be thrown down to the ground by DPS, and it's a shocking display, and really, really unwarranted.
For those just joining us, this is the current scene of the second wave of LAPD officers that showed up on campus around 5, possibly 5:30, armed with riot gear. You can see some of the helmets, some of the non-lethal weapons, and a few of the zip ties. Now, within the last 30 minutes or so, they began arresting protesters within that core group that you see on screen, a handful of which have already been taken into custody and put into a paddy wagon off screen.
And we've seen now about 10 students and protesters arrested, and they are being taken one by one from the core group, and they are being zip tied and taken to a paddy wagon here on the center of campus.
Corinne, to the best of your ability, do you feel like the officers have been transparent about what they were going to do once they got on campus, once they started moving protesters along? Were you sort of aware that they would be arresting people and in the fashion that they would make those arrests?
Not at all. I mean, we heard from other journalists about the warnings, and the 10-minute warning was all through press, and like I said, the officers only spoke to the protesters in the park, and they gave them that warning about 10 minutes until arrest, although it took a bit longer. But no, we had no communications or announcements about how this would go, and we saw that slowly LAPD moved in and surrounded the park and pushed people out, and just those core protesters are left here, and they're being taken and arrested one by one. And we have footage here of them being loaded into the van.
And Corinne, how's the surrounding crowd behaving? Are they being silent, peaceful? Are they pushing or being violent?
Sorry, Clara, say that again.
How is the surrounding crowd behaving? Are they being peaceful or violent? Are they pushing, or what's going on? How are they acting?
So officers are stepping up one by one to that group. I'm gonna zoom out here. I was just warned by another journalist to watch out because we are just on the outside of the periphery of officers. But they, like I said, have their hands on batons and are ready if anything happens. But protesters so far have been peaceful and surrendered one by one to arrest by officers.
Is the surrounding crowd moving, or are they staying put?
The surrounding crowd has stayed put. Yeah, it's a lot of students here who are observing, and I would say a full line and perimeter around. The loudest students are at the building, the International Affairs building, and they are continuing to chant and sing and drum and demand that they let these protesters go. So far, I have not seen anyone from USC administration, or they have not identified themselves here. You would think that there would be some kind of presence, student life or administrators here who are looking out for students. But no, I have not seen any identified administrators here today at all, earlier in the day or this evening with the imminent arrests.
For those just joining us, USC administration has not made a comment about the current protests happening on campus. There was one made by Provost Guzman earlier that is not attached to the rest of the administration. President Carol Folt specifically has not made a comment about the current events unfolding on campus.
And as of now, the only communication students have been receiving are DPS text alerts.
Not much movement. We are just seeing protesters taken one by one and arrested with zip ties and led away. Again, no resistance. Protesters are submitting. Not yet. No vans have left. They are continuing to fill. We see 2 white vans here in the middle of campus, and they have sectioned off that area with police tape, but students are still around and watching. I'll be really interested in student reactions after this concludes.
We reject, we want to be clear that we reject speech that is hateful and that causes harm.
Has anything started to settle down at all, or is it still quite peaceful? Or quite noisy?
Yeah, the crowd is continuing to chant and cheer and protest their arrest, but each protester is coming out one by one. So we are seeing each protester be taken away. It's not a quick process.
Thank you, Corinne. In a moment, we're going to go to a separate protest that is also on campus. This one taking place at the cross section between Hoover and Jefferson. Reporter Anthony Bottino is live on scene. Anthony, can you tell us a bit about what's going on at Hoover and Jefferson?
Yes, Malcolm, over here, these are all the protesters that could not get into campus. Most of these appear to be students, but I cannot make that out for sure. They're currently chanting in another language. Previously, they were chanting against USC, saying things like USC go to hell. Some of the cars driving by are honking in support, reacting with tears from the crowd.
Thank you, Anthony. For those just joining, we have shifted from the protest that took place at Alumni Park, where reporter Corinne Smith is at. We are also showing you the protest that is happening at Jefferson and Hoover on the right side of the screen.
Called him? Yeah, I can't hear him.
Police have made arrests at Alumni Park. A handful of student protesters have already been placed in paddy wagons, anticipating that they will go down to the LAPD police department. Now, this core group of protesters initially started off with about 50 protesters, those numbers slowly dwindling. As you can see, some arrests being peacefully made in the background. From what we were told from reporter Corinne Smith, we were told that officers were not very transparent with when, how, and in the manner/capacity these arrests would take place. Once LAPD officers came on campus around 5:30, they started separating protesters between the core group that you see on screen and other protesters that are behind the officers that have created a barricade around that core group of protesters. Those protesters, of course, still remaining strong, locked in arms, as you can see, surrounded by a sea of LAPD officers.
So the tents have been cleared, it appears, from Alumni Park. We are not seeing any student possessions. Really, just what's left here are protesters and some water bottles and various trash. Definitely the camp was cleared earlier. And yeah, protesters are led one by one by armed officers in riot gear and zip-tied and taken from the park. Again, there has been no resistance. There's been no real interaction between protesters and police here during the arrest. We're not too close, but we're not seeing protesters speak directly to officers. It seems they are maintaining their right to remain silent and are led off one by one.
Corinne, are protesters voluntarily giving themselves up for arrest, or are they being systematically picked by officers?
I believe they are stepping forward. They are kind of motioned towards and then they step forward. But behind the arresting officers, I will say the surrounding line of officers have their batons ready, and students are now chanting faster and louder to let them go, let them go.
Has there been any action or interaction, maybe some change between the protesters outside of the officers and the officers that are sort of policing the core group of protesters that we're looking at?
So far, what I can see is that students are remaining on the outside, supportive and chanting, and then the officers are facing them with their batons drawn and silent, maintaining that perimeter around the arresting officers and protesters. But the numbers are incredible here, and it does feel like the student crowd has grown. We have students surrounding the park on all sides and observing and filming, and the core group of protesters is shrinking for sure. Probably half have been taken away now, or maybe less than half, a third have been taken away, because there are also protesters on the ground, seated on the ground. But again, protesters are surrendering peacefully, not saying anything, and being arrested here at Alumni Park at USC.
Okay, and we also have an important campus update from the Office of the Provost. That is Andrew T. Guzman. The key point in this lengthy letter that he wrote says that, and I
can't
quote,
leave this
"We
area."
want to be clear that we reject speech that is hateful and that causes harm to others. In these challenging times, we call on the Trojan family to remember that every member of our community is deserving of respect, has the right to be safe on campus, take classes and participate in other campus activities without fear of harassment or bullying. It should be everyone's priority to treat each other with kindness and care." And this letter directly addresses the protest that was taking place on campus today, outside Doheny Library and in the center of academic buildings.
Yeah. All right, so I'm here with two students here today. Do you want to introduce yourself and talk about why you're here?
Hi, my name is Sam Macumbo.
My name is Devon Jonjo.
What brings you here today?
I saw the messages on our student channel and I wanted to see what was going on, so I came here after classes just to see the peaceful protests, and now I'm seeing people getting arrested, so just interesting to see how things are unfolding here as we see it.
Yeah, and what's your impression of this incredible police force and just how this is going down?
If I'm being completely honest, I think it's rather disgusting. Like, this has been a very peaceful protest. Nobody has particularly done anything to this point. And then cops come out, they're gripping their batons. There's a lot of hostility within the air. And I don't know, it just feels like a gross use of resources in a way that does not need to be having, you know what I mean? I feel like the reaction does not at all meet any crime because there hasn't been any.
Yeah, we have seen just a handful of kind of skirmishes back and forth. What did you see here tonight? Like, what was your observation of the protesters?
The whole time I was here personally, I haven't seen anything violent, but I know there was some altercation earlier when I wasn't there. But from what I've seen, it's been pretty peaceful. So that's all I can speak on that.
And how long have you been here?
We've been here, I think, a little over an hour now. We've just been seeing everything that's been going on, and same thing, you know, nothing's really happened from the perspective of the protesters. They've been peaceful and they've kind of just been minding their own business to this point.
And are you surprised at this response and USC calling in police so quickly, you know, just hours since the encampment started?
I figured something like this would happen just due to the large amount of students and others protesting here, so I'm not too surprised. But yeah, it's definitely a large police response here.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And is there anything else you'd like to add today?
Just that, you know, I'm praying for everybody out here. I hope everyone stays safe, and I hope they're able to communicate whatever message they think needs to get out. You know what I mean? Clearly it's a strong one that they all believe in very heavily.
Yeah, same thing.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's really great to hear from students. And now we can see this core group of protesters. Maybe 20 are left with people seated between, and this student appears to be smiling as he is being arrested and taken away. But police, again, are picking out each protester. They're peacefully surrendering. And probably, I'd say 20 left with locked arms in the circle. Sitting, it's hard to tell. I would say maybe like 10, 12 students inside and maybe 10 surrounding. It's hard to see.
Yeah, no problem.
Corinne, can you make out if the police are saying anything or if the protesters are saying anything?
No, the police, we can't hear really any directions or sharing with protesters under arrest. And protesters are silent and surrendering. We can just hear students continuing to chant from the outside. Stand up, fight back. They're chanting, stand up, fight back.
Has there been any additional interaction between the protesters behind the officers and the officers themselves?
Sorry, say that again.
Has there been any additional interaction between students that aren't part of the group on screen and officers that are blocking their entryway to them?
Not that we can see. Usually you can see kind of the crowd run or rush, or you can see a skirmish go on in the crowd, but not in the last half hour as these arrests have continued. The students are just standing back, chanting, supporting, observing, filming, but there has been no provocation by students here tonight.
Thank you, Corinne. We have an update. There are dozens of officers that are being pulled from the Alumni Park and going toward the intersection of Jefferson and Hoover, where we have Anthony Bottino live on scene. Anthony, could you tell us about what has changed within the last 15, 20 minutes?
Yeah, the protesters have started to move away as the police are coming in. It looks like they marched all the way over here from down the street. They stopped. It looks like they're going to start moving in soon. The protesters have started moving, though. It looks like they're going down the street now.
Pardon me, we're not sure if those officers were being pulled from Alumni Park, but we do know for a fact that there are officers marching to Hoover and Jefferson, where students are currently protesting. Anthony, are the protesters blocking traffic? Or is there some sort of tension that's happening between the officers that are on screen and the protesters that they're about to start moving toward?
The protesters have not interacted with the police on Hoover yet. So far, it's been pretty peaceful. There's been no violence or anything of the sort. Right now, the police are just standing here. It looks like they're just waiting to move in. The protesters have moved from Hoover, though. They are no longer at the intersection between Jefferson and Hoover.
Where have the protesters moved to?
It looks like they moved down the street, and right now they are circling across the entrance to the campus.
Entrance of the campus on any specific street, if you could mention it?
It looks like they're moving in a circle.
Okay.
They're farther down the street. They moved down a little bit. It looks like they're marching more down now, too. The police have yet to move, though. It's gone relatively silent. They have moved farther away. But the police have yet to move either. They're not saying anything. They have cleared out the entire intersection over here, and they're starting to move. The police have stayed still, though. They have not moved at all.
You said the protesters were circling. Are you able to tell us where the protesters are circling at or near or to?
They were circling right in front of the entrance between Jefferson and Hoover, and it looks like they're starting to move a bit.
Okay, thank you, Anthony. Have the officers made any contact with you? Have they said anything about what their next steps are?
The officers have not said anything yet. They have not interacted with the protesters here at all. They have just been standing here the entire time. They're still a bit of a distance away, but they have not interacted with the protesters yet from over here.
For those just joining, we're showing you two different protests occurring on USC's UPC campus. The left is showing you the ramifications of the protests at Alumni Park, where there was a group of nearly 50 core students and some other protesters who had joined locked arm in arms. Now, those protesters have been removed from the area and were zip-tied, pushed into a paddy wagon, waiting for further notice on what has happened to those protesters. The screen on the right shows you officers lining up at the Jefferson and Hoover intersection where there previously were protesters. Those protesters at Jefferson and Hoover have now moved till further into a different entrance on campus. Now we will bring you back to Alumni Park. where the circle of students that was around 50 or so protesters has now shrunken drastically, with a handful of arrests being made. You can see
All right,
some
so
being
we
made
are
on
seeing
screen.
protesters continue to be arrested by dozens of LAPD police officers here. They are surrendering peacefully, one by one, and we can see that core group is shrinking in numbers. They're being taken away one by one, and students are on the outside chanting, "Let them go, let them go."
Corinne, can you
And we are
estimate
inside
how many... Oh, sorry. Corinne, are you able to estimate how many protesters are still remaining in the circle?
I would say probably like 12 or 15. But I wanted to say too that we actually are inside this police barricade. There's caution tape surrounding, and we're kind of here by the fountain in front of Doheny Library, on the border here, observing. But there are definitely police surrounding this area, as well as students in support of the protesters being arrested here. But we are not leaving this area because it's not guaranteed that we would be able to get back here. So we're just sticking with this angle here, monitoring and documenting each arrest.
And just as a reminder to anyone else joining us now, the USC campus has been closed off to anyone without a valid USC ID card. Okay, Corinne, also, now the group jumping from about 50-ish people to 12 to 15 is a massive jump. With all these protesters being arrested and taken away, you've mentioned that they are being held in a vehicle. What's going on around the vehicle? Are students gathering around the vehicle? Is there a commotion there? Do you have access to that area? Are you able to see what's going on?
So it looks like people are being taken away peacefully. There is no obstruction, there's no crowds or any kind of protest at the vans. And so protesters are being taken away by LAPD peacefully. There's definitely no obstruction here.
Corinne, is it only that core group of protesters that is being zip-tied and pulled away? Have there been any possible arrests made with students that weren't within that inner circle?
Not that I've seen. The surrounding group has been really peaceful and observing. I have not seen any other clashes in the crowd here. Just this group picked off one by one by armed police officers and taking them away. But this group is continuing to lock down. They are determined. They're seated here and peaceful, quiet, and just maintaining here.
At least 50 people have been arrested now. Corinne, they're around the police barricade with the massive group of students that's around. How are they behaving? Has the number of students diminished or grown, or is it staying the same, and how are they acting?
It seems like the crowd is really maintaining here, and they want to observe and witness the arrests going on. And the press is still here too. There's lots of cameras, guaranteed to see this on Nightly News Tonight. We are standing here with KTLA and various news channels, so this is definitely being broadcast and being witnessed and observed. I'm trying to find another student. It would be great to hear student reactions, but also many people have been hesitant to talk on camera because there have been risks. As we know, we've seen on other college campuses definitely retaliation against students for protesting to support Palestine. So it's a little more difficult, but I will walk around and ask people. Hold on just a sec.
Corinne, from what you can tell, has the police presence grown at all? Have more officers come to the area?
Sorry, say that again?
Oh, good. Can you mention, if you can, if any police officers have gone to the area in increased numbers? Has their presence grown at all?
Oh, wow. I mean, there's just so many police officers here, it's really hard to say. I think they have stayed put over the last hour. Surrounding the park here. I wouldn't say their numbers have grown substantially, but they're just a constant here.
Corinne, does it seem like the speed of the arrests is increasing, or are they detaining them at about the same rate?
I think about the same rate. It's pretty consistent here, kind of one by one. And again, we have not seen any resistance or protest directly from this group here. They are going peacefully, they're submitting and being taken away, handcuffed and taken away one by one. The crowd is continuing to chant, "Let them go, let them go," with each arrest.
Just an update for the protesters that were initially at Hoover and Jefferson. Those protesters have now moved near the Galen Center.
And LAPD is still holding at that intersection, at the intersection of Hoover and Jefferson. They are not moving.
Yeah, I will say too that we were expecting violence. Police seemed to be surrounding. They had their batons ready, armed police in riot gear, and it was very tense there while they surrounded the park, and there was very little direction, and I seriously thought violence was imminent, but it appears that protesters are surrendering peacefully, and so far no direct clashes between officers and protesters, thankfully.
Are there any more DPS officers on scene, or does it seem that LAPD has completely taken over the area?
Sorry, say that again?
Are there any more DPS officers on scene, or does it seem like LAPD has completely taken over the area around Alumni Park?
Oh yes, LAPD has completely taken over, and we're hearing now that NBC has reported there have been 50 arrests here today. So with each arrest, a group of 4 officers comes forward, and they are approaching protesters. They appear to be saying something, perhaps they're right, and then picking them out one by one, where they are then zip tied. The prior arrests, the arrested protesters are no longer here. We can see those 2 vans have left. They have been taken away. It's really hard to see. There's now cars parked in the center of the plaza, and it's not clear where those protesters are being taken. But now we have this core group seated on the ground here. I'd say maybe 10 students are left and surrounded by officers and being each arrested.
Has there been any word by any LAPD officers as to where that first group that was in the first van is being taken?
Oh yeah, I'm not sure.
Corinne, it looks like there are so many officers now. Are you able to estimate how many there are really?
I would say that there's over 100. I would say hundreds on campus today. But they definitely surrounded Alumni Park here, and we've just been staying in the same area. But yes, you can see clearly that the number of officers outnumber the number of protesters easily.
Corinne, we're getting word that there's a few cars parked near Alumni Park. Are you able to tell us what's happening right to your left, if I'm not mistaken? Are those police cars? Are they standard automobiles? Are those, could you sort of mention what's happening with them if you can?
Yeah, it's hard to really tell. Like, maybe they're unmarked LAPD cars there. You can see police in jackets standing there. We can see a protester standing there at the silver car. Perhaps it is unmarked LAPD detective cars, but they do not look like any kind of official marked security vehicle. But let's watch here and see if they put the protester in this silver sedan. Yes, all the vans from earlier have gone, meaning they were loaded up with protesters, arrested protesters, and have left campus. So we are just watching these protesters here. And so far we have heard that they are arrested for trespassing, but I've not heard any update in that arena. Maybe you all in the studio have heard what exactly they're arrested for.
So far, we have not gotten an update. Are you able to tell us how many protesters of that core group are still left?
Here, seated on the ground, it looks like we have 6 protesters left of that core group.
For those of us just joining, LAPD officers with riot gear showed up on campus at about 5 o'clock, possibly 5:30, where they started separating protesters amongst different sections of the campus. This group that you're seeing right in front of you of about 5 or 6 students initially was 50 students locked in arms. That group has now shrunk into what you see in front of you. The previous group of protesters now has been arrested by LAPD.
So here we have the last group of protesters. They have locked arms. They've been seated here for the last hour, peaceful, and now surrendering to officers, which you can see are surrounding them. But there is a heavy line of officers on the other side between supporting students and these core protesters. And they continue to chant, "Let them go, let them go."
Corinne, it looks like some of the protesters are willfully getting up on their own volition. Would it be fair to say that it looks like they're voluntarily being arrested and there's no pushback, or officers aren't forcing them to be arrested?
Yes, definitely. They're surrendering peacefully. They're not being grabbed or lifted and taken each one by one peacefully. On the other side, students are watching and filming, and we're sort of the press here, the press line on this side, but the students have remained. The surrounding crowd has remained, I would say, pretty consistent. I don't know that's grown too much, but they're just watching this whole thing unfold.
And also, we are hearing now from the LAPD that the charges these protesters are being arrested for is criminal trespassing. That's criminal trespassing for these charges, for these arrests.
Protesters really seem to be getting up voluntarily and are obeying directions.
Is there any word on what might happen when the final protester does get arrested?
Another protester has been arrested. And now we have 3 left from this core group. It's been about an hour, and they are surrendering peacefully.
Corinne, what do you think is going to happen when they've all been arrested? We're down to the last 3 right now from the original core group.
It's unclear. We have had no direction from LAPD to this crowd today, so it's not certain what will be the next move after all these arrests are made. We can see here that there is a gallon of milk, and you can tell that protesters were ready to be tear gassed. They were prepared today for violence, but luckily there has not been any violence between protesters and police. We did see a very forceful arrest earlier, the first one of the night, and then this core group of protesters were arrested. I would say about 50 originally, and here we are down to the last 2. But it's unclear what's going to happen next, or how LAPD will be clearing this area, or how student supporters will react to this scene here.
Corinne, now that the initial paddy wagon has been taken away and those protesters are now gone, are you able to tell where the remaining protesters are being arrested and being taken away? Are they being placed in a car or maybe a different unmarked van?
Yeah, so we're seeing the protesters behind us in the plaza who have been arrested. They're waiting there, and I can see more supporters. All right, and we are seeing here the last protester is being arrested now, holding up a Palestinian flag.
We will stand by to see what occurs after this final arrest.
So now we see, we'll be following this final protester. They've left his flag there and walked across the Palestinian flag, and we can see that he is now being handcuffed, zip-tied, and taken away. So it's unclear what is going to happen next. The crowd is chanting that people united will never be defeated, and let them go, and continued support for these protesters arrested. But again, there has been no direction from LAPD, no announcement of what will happen next, but they will likely try to clear this park and clear all students from campus. So we are seeing now this group of arrested protesters here in the center of campus. The paddy wagons have left, and so it's not really clear if these unmarked cars are also law enforcement and will be taking protesters, or they're waiting for more vans. It seems to be quite a crowd here, and then there's also bystanders and students who are watching and observing, and definitely media is still here documenting. It's really hard to see because we are kind of inside the police line here, and eventually we're going to have to make a choice about leaving this area or staying. But so far, we can see that the officers in riot gear, the crowd has not dispersed. On the other side, we can see they're continuing to chant, and the numbers are strong here, and they are continuing to support the students.
Corinne, now that the
And
final
they say,
arrest
"This
was
is our
made,
school."
has there been any change within the protesters next to the police? Has there been a change in the amount of police? Has there been a little bit more tension being back and forth between the two groups? Could you speak to that a little bit?
I have not seen any more kind of encounters with police, but the protesters are strong. Their numbers, they don't appear to be moving, and it's not clear what's going to happen next. Again, there is no announcement from LAPD. There's no sign of what will happen next, but definitely tension here in Alumni Plaza and uncertainty.
And Corinne, with regard to the police force at Alumni Park, is the police force intensifying, or what's going on? Is it intensifying, or are they still keeping people in? Are they pushing people out? Are they pushing you out? Media out?
Not yet, no sign. It's really kind of everything at a standstill. All those officers are still, and the numbers, I say, have not grown. I don't know about outside this area, but yeah, we're kind of at a standstill here.
Are there any officers that are willing to talk about the current situation? Maybe a little bit more communication now that the final arrest was made?
We have heard that LAPD has given out another dispersal order. It was not announced on any kind of bullhorn or anything, but we're just getting word of that. So there might be more arrests, and students seem to be standing firm and observing what will happen. But those core protesters, that core group of about 50, have been arrested and taken away from Alumni Park. So now we are just waiting and seeing what LAPD will do next. And I wonder if there's any sign from the administration and any messaging recently from the administration. There has been no announcement verbally since the arrests of all those core protesters. It is unclear what is happening next.
Corinne, are you and Michael safe? Is there been a change in how the police are handling maybe some of the media, some of the protesters?
Thank you. Yeah, no, we are in the same spot and behind this wall of police officers, and we're okay. We're doing all right. We are also amongst this pretty big press pool here with LA news outlets and national news outlets. So we're kind of in this press wall here, and safety in numbers. But the officers have not said anything to us. They just have maintained that wall, and we're just going to stay here and document and see what happens next.
Thank you, Corinne. For those
we
just
are
joining
seeing
us, the
police
last
exit.
protester was arrested a few minutes ago, and now you can see that LAPD is moving in towards the center of campus a little bit more. Corinne, can you tell us what's happening?
Yeah, we are seeing this wall of LAPD officers now march towards the center of campus, and we know that there are some arrested protesters still waiting handcuffed there, I think for vehicles to take them away. So they're marching through the center of campus and appear to be exiting and leaving. There are definitely still officers here on scene. They've surrounded the park and have not moved. Sorry about that. But it seems that they are exiting. Probably 24 officers, but we still have this police wall here around the park. No, the officers here are staying put and just holding place.
And what about the student crowd that's outside the police barricade?
So it looks like they are ready and taking down the police tape, maybe to disperse themselves from the park. But yes, there are still officers present, and they have now moved towards the middle of campus. More police officers there, perhaps protecting the arrested protesters over there. But the student group has not moved either. They're still chanting and singing in support, and so far no movement.
We're just getting word that there is a group of protesters marching toward the Coliseum, the Memorial Coliseum, on Exposition Boulevard. We're currently showing you that on the right side of the screen. We're being told that they moved from the village crosswalk and are making their way they're making a loop As far as we know, LAPD has not followed the protesters that are outside of the campus. The protesters on the right side of your screen.
Yeah.
As you can tell on the left side of your screen at Alumni Park, the LAPD police presence is still strong, but there are no longer any protesters in the center of Alumni Park. Those protesters were arrested within the last 20-25 minutes or so, but the presence remains strong for both protesters and LAPD officers. The right side of your screen shows you a protest that has currently been moving from Exposition Boulevard to Memorial Coliseum.
Yeah, I'm looking. Are you students? Yes. Do you want to talk to ATVN? It's a student-run TV show. We're on YouTube and we're just following it all live, and you know why you're here and how you feel.
The protest on your right is near the Rose Garden, off USC's campus.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we've never
on Exposition.
Okay.
We'll just go live. We've been going live for like 2 hours. It's totally chill, and just to express, you know,
Specifically
how
the
you
entrance
feel.
to Exposition Park.
Yeah. I got 2 people. What year are you?
I'm a freshman.
Yes, great. I'm Corinne. I'm a graduate student.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
I'm Sally.
It's literally my first time doing this. Yeah, I do. And I'm here with 2 USC students who are here. And can you introduce yourselves and talk a bit about like why you're here today?
I'm Sarah. I kind of stumbled here on my way to class and kind of just stayed. I think it's really great that the student body has kind of unified around this cause, and it's been like really emotional for me just seeing kind of the solidarity everyone has for the people of Palestine and against the apartheid of Israel.
Yeah, and how long have you been here today?
I've been here since around 5. I've kind of just been like on the outskirts of the protest, but like even on the outskirts, you can still feel a lot of the emotion and the solidarity just throughout.
Yeah, and do you want to introduce yourself and talk about what brings you here today?
Yeah, my name is Araceli, and I'm here because I also think it's very great that just the student body here at USC is coming together for such an important issue, because I think that this is definitely something that needs to be talked about, and something that definitely the faculty here have been just brushing over. And I just think it's really important to kind of bring light to an issue like this.
And what do you think of this police presence and just like how this day has unfolded? It's an incredible number of officers to students protesting, and it's just it's really an incredible scene. And yeah, what's your impression?
I definitely think the police presence is unnecessary. I don't think that there has been anything that any of the students here have done to deserve such treatment from police, from LAPD. I think it just definitely isn't necessary, and nobody is committing any harm to property here at the school or to other people. So I just really think it's unnecessary.
Yeah, like everything she said. I think their presence here is really what's causing the tension. It's kind of unnerving, and then you have all the helicopters circling the area. Even if you're not here on the quad, even if you're like in class or in your dorm, you're still feeling that presence, and it's really just unsettling and unnecessary in my opinion.
And prior to this, have you been following the protests on other campuses and this like wider movement that's just launched in recent days?
Yeah, I've been I haven't been like actively following it, but I have seen things on social media of like protests happening on other campuses and just like all throughout the world. And I think it is a very important issue that should be protested and that should be talked about around the world.
Yeah, and is there anything else you'd like to add today? We're going to go to our other updates. There's other protests and marches around campus in this area, but is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think it's just really nice to see everybody standing up for such an important issue that's happening right now, and really learning the history and the context behind what's happening. And I don't know, it's as sad, as frustrating as it is what's happening right now, it's great to see some kind of response to that and such unity.
Thank you, definitely. How about you?
Yeah, I also think it's very great to see everybody here protesting this, because it is very important. I've stressed this so many times. It's very important. And I just think that the faculty and the board and everybody who has a say in what happens here needs to listen to their students and to listen to just the heartbreak that these students are feeling and do something about it, because it's like the way that that faculty and just anybody in charge is the way that they're just handling this whole situation. I think it's just not professional. It's not what they should be doing. They should be listening to their students and listening to our needs and what we want and what we need to see. And I just think they're not doing that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and your voices here today. And we're going to continue to be documenting this and watching and kind of seeing as this unfolds. So thank you so much. Thank you.
So by now, more than 50 people have been arrested, and the LAPD says that these arrests have been because of the reason of criminal trespassing. But there is still no word from the USC admin, from the USC administration about the protests on campus.
Now, these encampments are not specific just to USC. They've been happening across the nation. We know UT Austin also had encampments on their campus like ours. They also had a police presence that came by. Earlier this week, Columbia University was under fire for their protests to the point where their president had to testify under Congress. For those just joining, you're seeing the aftermath of what took place today at Alumni Park. Very early in the morning, around 5 a.m., this was the exact spot where USC students and protesters alike stood their ground, created tents, made signs, and sat in place protesting the conflict in Israel and between Israel and Gaza. At around 11 a.m. is when DPS officers came by to take away the tents and the students, saying that they were violating the university rules. At around that same time is exactly when a clash between campus officers and protesters and students ensued. During that protest, one person was arrested and placed in DPS custody. They were eventually later released due to pushback between from the protesters. At around 5 p.m., a wave of more LAPD officers came by, armed with riot gear, and created a barricade between different protesters. The core group of protesters that stood locked in arms at Alumni Park in front of you, and other protesters that were not part of that core group. That core group of about 50 protesters has now been arrested. All 50 of them are now in LAPD custody. Now we're bringing you to the scene of what's left. Corinne, can you tell us what you're seeing right now?
So students have reassembled in the park here, and we can see protesters have come back, but police are still here in a smaller group. They're chanting ACAB, ACAB. ACAB is all cops are bastards. A long-time police protest. And I've actually lost my cameraman. I've lost Michael here in the crowd. But a lot of protesters have come down from the steps and reassembled in the park. Okay, and here is Michael. We're together again. But protesters have stepped forward to meet police, chanting. No, the police line is quiet. But you can hear that protesters. No more officers in the area. The numbers have decreased of officers, but and protesters as well. Some people have left, but we have a energetic crowd who is protesting this police crackdown and arrest of students.
Corinne, in your opinion, what do you think is going to happen in the next hour or two? You know, it's almost going to be sundown. What's going to happen? What do you expect to happen within the next couple of hours once it gets dark?
It's really hard to tell what's going to happen next because, like I said, these past 2 hours, the police have not given much direction. And so it's not clear, like police could disperse students peacefully or there could be just a rush.
Definitely makes me really identifiable.
Okay, well, we're not sure, but I know lots of Annenberg Media journalists are out here and many press are out here continuing to document. Students are also out here chanting and outraged, and it's not clear what will happen next. And we can hear chants, "Shame on you, shame on you." All right, so Michael and I are gonna sign off here. Thank you so much to this whole Annenberg team. We've been live for 2 hours and we really couldn't do it without this amazing Annenberg group. So I want to thank everyone in the studio. I want to thank all the producers, all the directors, engineers, reporters, and this huge effort, this group effort to bring you this news live. And we'll definitely be following in the coming days. So thank you so much, and back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Corinne. Please stay safe out there with Michael, our cameraman. You've been watching an extended ATVN coverage of LAPD coming on campus and making arrests to protesters showing solidarity with Gaza.
So to recap what has happened today, students set up an encampment this morning around 5 a.m. in Alumni Park in solidarity with Gaza. Around 11 a.m., DPS arrived on the scene, and that's when a clash broke out. But no one was arrested at the time.
At around 5 o'clock, LAPD marched onto campus and arrested more than 50 protesters. Right now, dozens of LAPD officers remain on campus, and the university has closed campus to anyone who does not show a USC ID.
Thank you so much for watching this extended coverage of protests here at USC. I'm Clara Rodriguez.
And I'm Malcolm Caminero. For more coverage on this event and other news, watch and subscribe to youtube.com/Annenberg Media. Have a nice night.
Good night.